Ladies and gentlemen, which fund in the TSP makes sense for you in 2025? Which fund or funds are best for what you're trying to do, for where you're at in your career and your goals and what you're doing? Today, let's dive into exactly those questions. In the TSP, there are 5 core options and then some L funds as well. Let's talk about which are best for you. Now, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Dallin Hawes, a financial planner who serves feds just like you every day, and I love it. So let's talk about it. There are really 2 different types of funds between what the TSP has. Number 1, you've got the G and F funds, which are what they call bonds, right? We've all heard the term stocks and bonds. We've heard those terms. Bonds, long story short, tend to be more conservative, which means they're not as volatile. Like, they're not going to jump up and down a ton, but they're not going to grow as much as well. Bonds tend to be more stable. Specifically, the G fund is guaranteed never to go down, right? The government guarantees that. But it's also guaranteed not to grow much over time, right? So the bonds are a great place if you want stability. If you want a little bit growth over time, but just the main goal is stability. That is what the G and F funds are really, really good at. The C fund, S fund, and I fund are different. These, of course, are stocks. They are stocks. The C fund is basically the 500 biggest stocks in the U.S. The S fund is the small to medium-sized companies in the U.S. So those 2 make up basically the U.S. stock market, right? The C fund and S fund. And the I fund is international companies. But they're all companies. They're stocks that you're investing in. That is how these work. And as we all know, the stock market looks more like this. It looks more volatile, up, down, right? That's just the name of the game. However, certainly over the last 50 years, stocks have done a lot better than bonds. They've grown a ton more, but they've been more volatile in the short term. That is, in a nutshell, the core difference, right? Do you want the volatility but tend to have more growth? Or do you want the stability, but you give up growth? And to put it bluntly, as people approach retirement, it very rarely makes sense to be all in either one. Generally, you want a nice mix, but we'll get to that in just a second. First, let's address the L funds. The L funds, just so we're clear, are not unique funds. They are simply different recipes for different versions of the CS&I and G and F funds. Basically, one L fund may be 20% of that, 30% of that. It's just a different mixture of these 5 core ingredients, the 5 core ingredients of these 5 funds, right? G fund, F fund, CS&I. The L funds just kind of mix them together in different variations. And if you didn't know, there's an L fund named after every 5-year increment. So there is, for example, an L2030, L2035, L2040, etc. And the further out the L fund is named after, so if we're talking about the L2070, the more aggressive it's going to be. The more it's going to be focused on stocks, CS&I. And then the closer it is till today's date, like the L2030 is a lot closer than 2070, then the more conservative it's going to be. The more it's going to be focused on the G fund, F fund, those sorts of funds. So the concept behind the L funds is you pick the L fund that is closest to your retirement date, and that's what you invest in. And it does all the changing for you. Now, if you used an L fund like that, it is certainly better to do that than, let's say, sitting in the G fund your entire career. It's much better to use an L fund. However, L funds are not perfect. L funds are not perfect. It is just a very generalized approach to how you should be investing. And especially as you approach retirement, in my experience, for the average Fed, the L funds actually get way too conservative. Okay? Again, I don't know if that's true for you. I'm a financial planner, but I'm probably not your financial planner. Unless I am, then hello, right? Long story short, most of the time, the L funds just way overdo it. If you actually line it up with your retirement date, then it gets way too conservative at that point. What makes sense for, I'd say, the average Fed, which I don't know if that's you, but the average Fed is to pick an L fund that's actually maybe 10 or so years beyond their retirement date. So if they're retiring in 2030, maybe you invest in the L2040, something that's a little further out. It's going to align better to probably how you want to invest. It's never perfect because it's automatic, right? Whenever you do anything automatic and don't actually tailor it for you, it's not going to be perfect, but it'll be in the right ballpark, okay? So now that we understand the core options with these different funds, okay, which are right for you? Well, let me just give some generalized overview because, again, I'm not your financial planner, but let me give you some generalized education on this. As a general rule, if you're early or mid-career, you're probably going to focus on the growth because you got a lot of time and you just need the growth over time. CS&I. You want to focus on those funds. And if you're especially early in career, I would not, like, for example, I'm early in my career. And I invest in stocks. I don't invest in any bonds right now because I'm far from retirement, right? I'm far from retirement. I'm a young guy. And so I focus on stocks, right? So basically, early in career, mid-career, that is a great approach. Now, as people approach retirement, it tends to make sense to start working in some bonds, right? Start working some in. And as people go into retirement, they want, generally speaking, you're going to want to have some of both. Now, some people think, well, I'm in retirement. Don't I want to be all conservative? Why should I take any risk in retirement? The answer is, well, you're not taking no risk if you're only in the G fund, right? You're just taking a different type of risk. Yeah, it's not going to bounce up and down like that, but it's also not going to grow. And inflation's going to eat your lunch, which is a risky thing as well. Is your money just going to get devastated by inflation over time? Yeah, probably. Right? It's just a different type of risk. So as people approach retirement, you're going to want to find a nice mix between the CS&I and the GNF so that you've got the stability you need in retirement, but also the growth you get over time. And by the way, I've got other videos on different strategies, on different ways to figure out how you should be investing in retirement. But what I found is it needs to be a lot more tailored around retirement because people are planning to spend money in different ways. For example, some people say, look, I don't plan on touching my investments at all. I just want to let it grow and I'll pass it to my kids one day. For those people, they may want to still focus on the CS&I even at retirement. But some say, no, I'm going to enjoy my money. I'm going to spend from this immediately at retirement. And some are going to buy big expenses. Maybe you're going to pay off your mortgage. Maybe you're going to buy a second home. Maybe you're going to take a big amount out for XYZ. Generally speaking, the more money you need soon out of your TSP, the more you're going to want to be focused on some safer investments. So that money is there for you and not bouncing around when you need it. So the sooner you need the money, the more should be here, right? The further out you need the money, generally speaking, the more should be in CS&I. And again, you can use an L fund if you'd like to do that, but you just want to make sure it actually makes sense for you because it will change over time automatically, and you want to make sure that always lines up with what you're trying to do. So I hope that's helpful. And if you have any questions yourself or if you have your own experience you want to share, put in the comments below. That helps us all learn and get better together. And I'll see you guys in the next video.